This is a clutch service video for a 1987 F-150 with a 5-liter engine and a 3-speed plus overdrive manual transmission, which is floor mounted. It also needs to have a throttle position sensor replaced, and there's a coolant leak under the engine somewhere. Maybe it's a freeze plug. There are other videos out there, but I don't think there's one for an 87, which is the first year with fuel injection with this particular transmission. So I'll do this video mostly so I have a record to put it back together. The first step obviously is going to be to disconnect the battery and remove the starter. So you can start by disconnecting the battery, removing the negative pole first and then the positive. Remove the shift lever. There's going to be different ways that it's fastened. With this 3-speed with overdrive, it has this cover that needs to be just turned counterclockwise until it unscrews. Then it should pull right out. To unscrew it, you can use a strap wrench or some other gentle persuader. Put jack stands and jacks under the frame. Use the kind of jack stands that have a lock so they won't have a danger of detaching and falling. But keep the jacks as a backup. Here the manual transmission fluid is being pumped out with a low-cost oil transfer pump. I'm going to use the same pump to fill it with some fresh oil when we're finished. Looking at the transmission from the driver's side, we see the hydraulic receiver. Luckily it's a externally mounted unit and it pops right out when you pull off the retainer clip, and so you can just tie it up and put it out of the way. Also, you need to disconnect what looks like maybe a backup switch indicator and a speedometer cable that pull out right over here on the side of the transmission. On the other side, on the passenger side, there's a fill plug that's square. You have to remove it, catch any oil that might spill out, and then put a tube in there and drain the transmission fluid out of it, the gear oil fluid. At the rear of the car, you see the drive shaft. Take out 4 bolts, and I think they're 1/2 inch. And once those are out, this should slip forward and you should be able to pull off the drive shaft. Remove the starter. It's just going to be in your way, and it's held on with only 2 1/2 inch bolts and then the electrical connection. Also get to work taking out the bolts for the bracket that holds up the transmission. Those are 18mm deep socket impact. It's nice if you have an impact wrench to make short work of it. Okay, correction on the starter plugs. One of the nuts was 1/2 inch, the other one was 9/16, and I didn't disconnect the power cord to it. I left that attached and just moved the whole thing out of the way instead of detaching it. This cross member, taking out the bolts is a little bit of a chore because you have to put a 15mm wrench on top to keep the nut from turning, while you use an 18mm down below to take the nut off. And once you get all the nuts off of this thing, you still have to take at least one of the support brackets off, because otherwise it won't move out of the way. And these brackets over here are kind of a bear to get out, because there's not much room. You have to at least loosen both of them, if not take them off, and then you can slide this bracket out of the way. The bell housing came off pretty easily. There's 6 bolts, and you can see there are 2 on top, and then 2 on the side, and then 2 more on the side. So they're all on the top half, and the ones on top were shorter. but now the transmission is accessible and I can get to the clutch. But that actually came out really easily, and it's not that heavy. This thing's aluminum. I think it's only maybe 40 pounds, 50 pounds, something like that. So not too bad. The transmission was sitting on that block that you see, and with those long threads, it was kind of in the way, so I took that out too. Well, I had a feeling that the coolant leak was going to be a hose or a freeze plug, and sure enough, it's a bad freeze plug. I've already knocked a hole in it with a screwdriver so I can pull it out. Looks like I'm going to have to detach, looks like some kind of a exhaust recirculation line out of the block temporarily, so I can move it out of the way to get at the freeze plug. There's a second one over here too, doesn't seem to be leaking, but I'm wondering if I should change it, just because this is very hard to get to without the transmission out of the way. And I don't think all this leaking, the slow leak that it was doing the transmission any good either, probably causing it to accelerate the slipping. Let me get these bolts off and just take this thing off and see what it looks like so I can get it swapped out. Please excuse the marginal quality of this measuring device, but the freeze plug seems to be between maybe 1 3/8 and 1 7/16. So I'm off to the store to get a replacement. You know, the old plate doesn't look too terribly bad. It's got a little bit of heat cracking on it, and the old one's worn down to the indicators. But really, I kind of like the quality of the old ones. The fit and finish seems a little better. You can see the springs are bigger. But we'll put in the replacements and see how they do. This appears to be the right size. It's a Dorman 565-077, purportedly 1.5 inches. It's not as high profile as the original, but it's brass and it should work. So let's put it in. This alignment tool will help line up the cover with the friction material, and then you're going to torque down all these bolts by hand, alternating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until it's torqued to specifications. Then you can put the bell housing back on.